He called me lucky, said I should be grateful he tolerated me. So I sold the house right out from under him without a whisper. The keys left on his gaming chair. The note, a reckoning. They planned to erase me before I forgot my own name, but I remembered first, and I made sure they'd never forget. It's always quietest just before the sun slips behind the fence line, casting long amber shadows across the walls of the house I once imagined growing old in peacefully. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. The porch light hums to life, soft and golden. The hedges I've trimmed for years still bloom like they're grateful for the care. It's the kind of house people might call cozy if they never stepped inside. But the silence here is deceptive. It's not peace, it's pressure. The kind that wraps itself around your lungs and squeezes. I live here, but I'm not sure I belong anymore. Inside, the air is thick with a kind of stillness that only breaks for one sound. His voice. Brandon's, my son, my grown son, though the word grown feels more like a technicality than a truth. He's in the room we used to call the den, though now it looks more like a low-budget command center. 3 monitors flicker with pixelated carnage, casting his face in hues of blue and blood red. The walls echo with the mechanical hum of his headset and the sharp, staccato bursts of digital gunfire. A fast food bag topples off the side table, landing next to a crusted pizza box like it's found company. His gaming chair squeaks. His throne, if we're being honest, angled just perfectly toward his screens. He doesn't acknowledge me when I pass behind him with a laundry basket. He rarely does. I'm the background noise in his world, static. Hey, I try, soft. He barely glances my way. Busy. That's always the word. Busy. I nod and move on, even though I know there's nowhere to go where the sound doesn't follow me. Upstairs, in the kitchen, even in the garden, I hear him. Always. Like a pulse inside the walls. The kitchen is dim, not from lack of light, but from exhaustion. Mine. I shift dishes into the sink, wipe down counters that were already clean, fold towels that didn't need folding. I do these things because they are mine to control. The only things, it feels like. Brandon moved in temporarily 8 months ago, lost his job, split with Lila, temporarily of course. They say everything is temporary when they don't want to own it. I let him come home. Of course I did. That's what mothers do. Only now it's not home. It's his space, his world. And I'm the interloper. Lila's here tonight. Her presence is a perfume of too sweet vanilla and too loud laughter. She breezes past me in her faux fur slippers, phone in hand, scrolling and smirking like I'm the sitcom character she's too polite to name. She doesn't talk to me so much as around me. Bran, can we please get some oat milk that doesn't taste like chalk? She calls, loud enough to echo. I'm 10 feet away. Brandon doesn't answer. He's mid-match. I don't expect anything else. Still, I find myself collecting the garbage they've left. Cups, wrappers, receipts, evidence. I carry it to the kitchen like a silent ritual. I've been here before, not in this house, not with this child, but in this pattern. My mother's voice echoes in my skull like a memory trapped in amber. Don't raise your voice, he'll shut down, don't challenge him. It'll only make things worse. Her life was one long compromise. My father, quiet but immovable, made the rules. She survived by shrinking herself. I swore I wouldn't be like her. And yet, here I am, whispering my needs to the air and praying they won't bounce back angry. I can't remember the last time Brandon thanked me or saw me. I pick up a pair of his socks, stiff and crumpled, and toss them in the laundry pile I've already folded twice today. My hand trembles, not with rage, but fatigue. I return to the kitchen table. The envelope waits for me, thick and final. I tear it open. Utility bill, due last week. Red lettering across the top bleeds into my eyes. I hold the paper in one hand, pen in the other. The tremble deepens, and then he appears, Brandon, just outside the kitchen doorway. He scratches his neck, steps over a cord I've tripped on more times than I can count. You should be grateful, he says without any buildup, that I still tolerate all this. I look up. His face is unreadable, calm. He means it. There's a beat. Just a second of silence too sharp to be accidental. He turns away. Gone again, just like that. The sentence hangs in the air, heavier than anything else he's ever thrown at me. Not shouted, not screamed, just delivered with the kind of certainty that slices cleaner than any raised voice ever could. You're lucky I tolerate you. I stare at the bill, at the ink bleeding from the numbers, at my own name, Leslie Ann Clark, the only one on the mortgage, the only one on every document that keeps this house from crumbling. My pen drops to the table, and for the first time in months, I don't reach down to pick it up. Brandon's room, the former guest bedroom, is no longer part of my house. It's a sealed-off dimension, glowing day and night with electric blues, deep reds, the static white of overloaded monitors. The air is thick in there, unbreathable even from the hallway. It smells like sweat, synthetic cheese, and digital decay. I stand just outside the door, looking in but no longer stepping foot inside. There's a thin line of crumbs across the carpet, a slow-spreading tide of filth that now permanently separates his world from mine. Towers of empty soda cans rise near his desk, flanked by crushed chip bags and discarded controller batteries. A stack of pizza boxes leans against the wall, one of them marked with a grease stain that resembles mold. He sits in the middle of it like a monarch of decay, eyes locked on the screen, fingers twitching with practiced precision. He barks into his headset, laughing between gunshots and explosions. The glow from his monitors casts long, alien shadows across the room, painting his face in unnatural colors. He doesn't see me, or he chooses not to. It's easier to pretend I'm invisible than to admit how often he makes me feel that way. In the beginning, I used to knock softly before entering. Now, I just clean when he's not home. Fast, surgical strikes. I dump trash, air out windows, wipe sticky surfaces with a cloth and a vengeance. Sometimes when I'm really angry, I unplug the Wi-Fi for just a minute. I pretend it's a reset. He calls it a glitch, little acts, tiny rebellions, the only kind left to me. Sometimes I vacuum under his door just to irritate him. I clank pans a little louder when I know he's streaming. It's petty, I know it, but it's all I have. My resistance is invisible unless he trips over it. He finally notices me today. I'm standing in the doorway, again, holding a basket of clean towels no one asked for. He pulls off his headset mid-match, annoyed. "You just gonna hover?" he asks. "I was just going to give you these." He waves a hand. "Leave them." I set them down on his bed, then straighten up slowly. "This isn't a dorm," I say. "You could help around the house once in a while." He scoffs. "You don't get it. This is my world. You'll never understand." There it is, the line. The arrogance of it chokes the air between us. "Your world?" I say, quieter now. "Under my roof?" He smirks, one side of his mouth curling like he's already won. That smirk. I've seen it before, on my father when he shut my mother down with a look. On my ex-husband when he told me to calm down during arguments. He always won simply by outlasting me. The smirk is generational. A symbol passed down from man to man like an heirloom built on silence and superiority. My fists curl at my sides. Not in preparation to strike, but in an old reflex of containment. Like my mother used to do. I remember watching her in the kitchen, knuckles tight around a wooden spoon, while my father explained why she was wrong again. I'm not her. I've told myself that 1,000 times, but here I am. Same posture, same silence. He turns back to his screen without waiting for my response, as if my presence is just another part of the background soundtrack. Later, I return to the kitchen and pull the mortgage folder from the drawer. It's thicker than I remember. Pages of payments, contracts, responsibilities. My name, Leslie Ann Clark, in legal ink over and over. I flip through it slowly, my finger pausing each time I see something that matters. Brandon's name is nowhere. Not on the mortgage, not on the utilities, not even on the Wi-Fi plan he worships like oxygen. This house is mine, solely, undeniably mine. That realization hits like a quiet exhale after holding your breath too long. It doesn't fix anything, but it plants a seed. A small, dangerous thought. Maybe I'm not as powerless as I've been made to feel? That night, after Brandon and Lila leave for a midnight snack run, I clean. More thoroughly this time. I go into his room, not to tidy, but to search. Not like a thief, like an archaeologist. Someone who needs the truth more than comfort. I find his old tablet under a pile of magazines. It's still logged in. Messages flood the screen as soon as I lift it. Lila, you think she even knows what's happening around her anymore? Brandon, not a clue. She still thinks she's in charge. Lila, you should get her to sign over the place before she starts forgetting where she put her shoes. Brandon, I give it a year, Max. Old Bat'll be drooling on the porch. I sit down slowly, the tablet still warm in my hands. There it is. Not just the contempt, the plan, the assumption. They've been mocking me, plotting, believing I'll just fade into the wallpaper and one day disappear entirely. I don't cry. I thought I might, but what I feel isn't grief. It's something older, colder, more useful. Resolve. The next morning, I brew coffee before Brandon wakes up. I open the windows. I hum softly while I sweep the floor, because now I know something he doesn't. Now I have a plan. I didn't learn silence by accident. It was taught, passed down like a family recipe with all the warmth stripped out. My mother called it discipline. What she meant was control. What she practiced was a kind of Cold War version of motherhood, rigid rules, clipped tones, and never a raised voice. Not because she didn't feel anger, but because she'd been taught that showing emotion made you weak, and weak women, in her mind, didn't survive. She didn't hug often, didn't praise. Her love came in the form of clean clothes, dinners at 6, and a look that said, "Don't embarrass me." I used to sit on the edge of her bed and wonder why she always seemed so tired. Now I know. It wasn't her body that was exhausted. It was her spirit. My father wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind either. He existed like a background hum, always present, never involved. He'd retreat into his newspaper, his garage, his routine. And when my mother tried to speak to him, he'd sigh, long, loud, and final. That sigh could shut a room down. I memorized it the way some kids memorize lullabies. When I married Jonathan, I thought I was choosing differently. He wasn't loud or violent. He didn't drink. He showed up on time. But quiet doesn't mean gentle. And routine doesn't mean love. He believed emotions were hysteria, especially from women. When Brandon was born, he barely blinked. When I cried in the delivery room, he said, "Don't be dramatic. You're fine." When I mourned my mother's death, he left a condolence card on the kitchen table, unsigned. He died young, stroke at 42. I told everyone I was devastated. I thought I was. But when the casseroles stopped coming and the sympathy cards disappeared, I noticed something strange. I could breathe easier. Brandon was 13 when we buried his father. He didn't cry. He sat stiff in the pew, his jaw set, his eyes dry. I remember thinking how composed he was. How strong, but it wasn't strength, it was mimicry. Looking back, the signs were all there. The way he rolled his eyes when I told him I was proud, the way he flinched if I touched his shoulder, the way he used silence not as a retreat but as a weapon. By 16, he was already pulling away. Closed bedroom door, sullen responses, small acts of disregard that I brushed off as teenage rebellion. He broke curfew and blamed me for not reminding him, lied about grades and claimed the teachers were biased. When I pushed back, he'd say, "You're overreacting." Just like always. Just like his father. And me? I played my part, tried to be patient, tried to be supportive. I nodded when I wanted to scream, smiled when I wanted to cry. I told myself I was doing better than my mother did. But survival strategies don't disappear just because you name them. Sometimes they evolve. Brandon didn't need to hit or scream to dominate a room. He inherited something subtler, sharper, the art of minimizing, the talent for making people feel absurd for having feelings. The first time I realized I might have reinforced the very cycle I swore to break was on a Tuesday morning. The house was still, and I caught myself whispering to the coffee machine, apologizing for waking the house. I laughed, then cried. 2 days later, June came by, my sister. We hadn't spoken in nearly 3 years, a falling out after our mother's funeral, old wounds reopened, then left to fester. She showed up unannounced, holding a loaf of banana bread like it was an olive branch. Thought you might want company, she said. Her eyes scanned the living room, took in the chaos, the silence, the void. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me the bread and touched my elbow gently, but I could feel the concern rolling off her. Rick, my next-door neighbor, had said something similar a week before. "You don't seem like yourself these days," he'd said, standing on his porch with a hose in one hand. "You ever need anything, you know where I am." I told them both I was fine. I wasn't. Later that evening, I started taking down the old family photos, the ones lining the hallway, the wedding portrait, Brandon's kindergarten picture, the Thanksgiving shot with fake smiles and stiff posture. One by one, I removed them from the walls, not in anger, just curiosity. I wanted to see the house bare. I wanted to know what it looked like without the weight of all those expectations. I laid the photos on the floor, their frames reflecting the dim light like tiny mirrors. Who were we pretending to be? I looked at the photo of my mother, stiff-lipped in her floral blouse, and whispered, "You tried, didn't you?" Then I said nothing else, because even now, part of me expected her to answer with silence. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again, but this time I didn't cry. I didn't stew. I started making a list, a quiet one, a plan. No more apologies. No more walking on eggshells in a house I paid for. No more tolerating the people who tore me down. I wasn't going to be my mother. I wasn't going to be my husband's ghost. I was going to break the damn chain. It's subtle at first. The shift. A tightening of the air when Brandon enters a room. The way his shoulders square, his voice takes on an edge sharper than it used to. I used to be able to read his moods by the set of his jaw. Now I can't keep up. He's angry before I've even opened my mouth. And Lila, she's always here now, her overnight bag permanently stationed by the foot of Brandon's bed. She pads around the kitchen in my slippers, leaves her false eyelashes on my bathroom counter, and critiques everything like she's rating a motel stay. "Did you use garlic powder in this?" she asks one night, her face pinched as she pushes food around her plate. "It tastes nostalgic." Brandon laughs, eyes locked on his phone. "Yeah, like cafeteria nostalgia." I keep eating, because if I stop, I'll scream. My presence in my own kitchen has become something to tolerate. Her eyes glance past me like I'm a housekeeper who stayed too long. She makes little jokes to Brandon, low enough that I can't always hear the words, but clear enough that I understand the tone. Mockery. I start retreating earlier each night, from dinner, from conversation, from the shared spaces that used to feel like mine. Then the bank statement arrives. I open it, expecting the usual. I've grown used to living tight, measuring groceries against utility bills. But this time, the number at the bottom curls something sharp in my gut. 2 checks are missing. One for rent on Brandon's supposed shared apartment from months ago. Another labeled miscellaneous and a vague term masking theft. I didn't write them. I didn't authorize them. I ask Brandon, careful, measured. He shrugs. "You probably forgot. You've been off lately." "Off?" I echo, cold creeping into my voice. "Yeah, like confused." The way he says it, confused, isn't just casual. It's curated, precise. "I'm not confused," I say, firmer now. He doesn't even look up. "Sure you're not?" Later that night, I lie awake replaying it. His tone, his certainty, the way he spoke like someone who had already rewritten the truth and just needed me to go along with it. "You're misremembering again," he had said when I pushed. "You do that a lot lately." My chest tightens. Gaslight. That's what this is. Not just forgetfulness, not mistake, intentional distortion. I walk outside. The garden used to be my sanctuary. Tomatoes, herbs, wildflowers that burst into life each spring. Now the soil's dry. The plants are brittle. The rosemary's turned brown, the basil's curled inward, like it's ashamed to be seen. I sit on the edge of the raised bed, dirt beneath my fingers, the silence too loud. Something is dying here, and it's not just the plants. Inside me, the war rages louder than ever. The guilt, he's your son, he's grieving, he's young, slams against the rising tide of fury. He's stealing, lying, dismantling you one manipulation at a time. I've kept quiet for too long, let too much slide under the guise of understanding. I start keeping a journal. I write everything down: times, dates, exact words. Not just to protect myself, but to prove to myself that I'm not losing my mind. The next day, Lila leaves her laptop on the kitchen table while she takes a shower. It's open. I try not to look, but then a message notification pops up. Brandon's name. Against my better judgment, I lean closer. She's more out of it lately, he writes. Start prepping the documents. She'll sign if it looks like it's just a renewal or something. Lila. Should we involve Rick? Might need a neighbor to back up her decline. Brandon. Already working on it. If we get power of attorney now, we can sell the house when she slips. She won't even know. I step back, like I've been slapped. The room tilts for a second, then steadies. They're planning to strip me of control. Legally, permanently. They want to make me disappear while I'm still alive. And for the first time in a long while, I don't feel scared. I feel focused. The day I finally say something, it doesn't feel like a moment. Not at first. It's just a Thursday, overcast sky, a cool wind sneaking through the half-cracked kitchen window, the scent of something burning, eggs maybe, still lingering from a breakfast no one thanked me for. Brandon walks in like he owns the place, not just the room, the air, the narrative. He's looking for something, his phone charger maybe, or his wallet. He leaves pieces of himself scattered like debris across every surface, expecting me to clean them up. He rifles through the drawers, yanking them open without care. One hits the cabinet with a loud bang. Do you have to slam everything? I ask, quieter than I mean to be, but steady. He pauses. Do you have to nag every time I breathe? I wipe my hands on a dish towel and face him. No shaking, no stammering, just tired truth. Brandon, I say, we need to talk. He groans, rolls his eyes. Can we not do this right now? We're doing this now, I say, calm but edged with something final. He leans against the counter, arms crossed, face blank. What exactly do you think you have to say that matters? I take a breath. I know about the checks. I know about the messages on Lila's laptop, about the power of attorney. His face twitches, barely. He laughs, sharp and bitter. You really are losing it. Number, I'm not. You're paranoid, he says louder. You're delusional. He gestures wildly around the kitchen. This sad little life of yours, it's falling apart, and instead of owning it, you're blaming me. I don't flinch. You're angry because you've been caught. He grabs a plate from the counter and hurls it across the room. It shatters against the fridge with a force that makes the whole house seem to flinch. You're nothing, he yells. You're a bitter, useless old woman, and I've tolerated you long enough. The word lands like a punch. Tolerated. There's a moment of stillness. My ears are ringing, but not from the plate. Flash. A memory. My father's voice, sharp, heavy with disdain, cutting through a silence my mother never dared break. You should be grateful anyone puts up with you at all. My mother standing by the sink, her face cracked but expressionless. She didn't speak, not once. I was 12, and I watched her disappear behind her silence. Now I'm 49, and I can feel the same pull. That urge to retreat, to wait it out, to minimize the explosion, make it easier for everyone. But I don't. Not this time. I stare at him unblinking. Not again. I whisper, never again. He freezes. For a second the house holds its breath. Then he storms off, muttering obscenities under his breath as he disappears down the hall, his door slamming like punctuation behind him. I stand there alone, surrounded by fragments of a broken plate and something deeper, something older, finally cracking apart inside me. That night, I tuck the mortgage papers under my pillow. It's not dramatic, just practical. I sleep on the knowledge that the house is mine, the bricks, the wood, the deed, all mine, and that knowledge becomes a kind of armor, a secret weapon. The next morning after Brandon and Lila head out, probably for groceries I'll pay for, I make the first call. Hi, yes, I'm looking to speak with someone about selling a home quietly. The agent's name is Carla. She sounds sharp, capable. She doesn't ask why I'm whispering. Over the next week, I begin collecting things. Small, vital things: birth certificate, insurance documents, jewelry, my father's old watch, my grandmother's silver cross tucked in the back of a drawer, photos of Brandon, some I keep, others I leave face down in a shoebox I no longer open. When Brandon's out, I take pictures of the house. Each room, each corner. I walk the halls differently now. Eyes open, mind calculating. Fear is still there, but it's quieter. It no longer leads. Something else does. Resolve. In the evenings, I smile when Brandon complains. I nod when Lila critiques my cooking. I let them think they've won, because they've already lost, and they don't even know it yet. It started with the jewelry, a pair of pearl earrings I hadn't worn in years, tucked in a velvet box from my wedding day. Then my mother's silver tea set, never used, always polished. I sold them to a quiet woman at a downtown consignment shop who didn't ask questions, just handed me cash in an unmarked envelope. The garage followed. Old gardening tools, a set of antique china, a bike Brandon never rode. Each weekend, a little more of me vanished from the house. Carefully, deliberately, no fanfare, no footprints. I packed the things I wanted to keep into boxes I labeled with random words. Holiday lights, winter clothes. They lived in the trunk of my car. It wasn't just preparation, it was evacuation. I met Carla in a corner booth of a diner that smelled like coffee and compromise. She was in her early 50s, her lipstick sharp, her blouse crisp. She ordered unsweetened iced tea and listened more than she spoke. "I'm not just selling a house," I told her. "I'm reclaiming it." Carla nodded once, understanding me more deeply than anyone had in years. "We'll do this quietly," she said. "No signs, no open houses, just one buyer, one clean sale." We met in that booth 3 times. Each time, I handed her another stack of papers, and she gave me another layer of control back. She became more than an agent. She became a mirror, someone who saw me not as a burden, not as someone fading into irrelevance, but as a woman standing back up. Convincing Brandon to sign the maintenance forms wasn't hard. I slipped them into a stack of other household paperwork: repairs, service notices, insurance updates, all real, all expected. I highlighted the line where he needed to initial. Small, harmless. "What's this?" he asked. "Just confirming I'm the sole property holder for a contractor's insurance update," I said with a shrug. "No big deal." He didn't even blink, signed, and went back to his game. That signature gave me the legal clearance Carla needed to finalize the preliminary transfer. It was clean, quiet, and irreversible. The buyer came a few days later. Joel, a single father in his 40s with a tired voice and honest eyes. He had a daughter starting middle school and a history that mirrored mine a little too closely. "I've been through something similar," he said during our first meeting at Carla's office. "Not with a son, with a brother. He nearly cost me everything." He didn't push for details, neither did I. That was the unspoken contract between survivors. The house went into escrow without a whisper. Brandon never noticed. His world was screen deep. His hours melted into game lobbies and headset banter. His mind 1,000 miles from anything real. The day I signed the final paperwork, he was downstairs, locked in another online match, barking orders to strangers. I watched him from the hallway, his fingers moving, eyes locked, mouth twisted in half laughter, half anger. I stood there for a long time, documents in one hand, pen in the other. It struck me how completely gone he already was. Even with the walls still standing around him, he'd moved into his own delusion. I signed the papers at the kitchen table. No hesitation, no tears. Later that week, Joel asked if we could meet again, alone. We sat in his truck parked by the lake. The windows fogged slightly from the cold. He didn't make small talk. "I didn't mention it before," he said quietly, "because I didn't want to complicate things. But I think you should know. Your son's name came up during my background checks." My chest tightened. "Go on." "He owes money, not a little. Enough that some of the wrong people are looking for a way to collect. My contact said he was trying to use the house, your house, as leverage." I stared out the windshield, watching a duck glide across the surface of the lake. My throat tightened, but I didn't speak. Joel continued. He said something about selling off partial ownership, but he can't, not legally. You've kept everything clean. He looked at me then. You did the right thing. I nodded once. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated, but I felt solid, like the ground beneath me was finally mine again. That night, I came home and watched Brandon play video games while I made tea. I smiled, not at him, at myself, because I knew something he didn't. He'd already lost the house, and I wasn't done yet. The final wire transfer cleared at 3:07 p.m. on a Tuesday. Carla called to confirm. Her voice was light, celebratory, but I only nodded into the phone, watching Brandon from across the room as he scrolled through his game menu. He didn't notice the tension in my shoulders vanish. I'd been rehearsing this moment for weeks, but when it came, I didn't feel victory. I felt clean, empty in a way that made room for something new. He was deep in gameplay when I started packing. I chose the quietest hours, those long twilight stretches where the glow of the screen had swallowed his reality whole. He was shouting into his headset about something. Kills, rankings, lag. His laughter was sharp, hollow, like a boy wearing the skin of a man. I moved like a ghost. Clothes first, just enough. Documents next. Jewelry I hadn't worn in years, tucked in the pocket of my travel bag. I left the things that didn't matter. A cracked vase, old cookbooks, family photos that no longer reflected anything true. My keys, both sets, went into a plain envelope. So did a copy of the finalized sale agreement, notarized and signed. The house was no longer mine, but everything that mattered was coming with me. The hardest part was the note. I sat at the kitchen table, the one he never ate at, and stared at a blank piece of lined paper for nearly 20 minutes. My hands didn't shake. They were still, steady. When I finally wrote, the words came all at once as if they'd been waiting behind my teeth for years. You said I was lucky you tolerated me, but this was always my house. Let's see how you tolerate reality. I folded it once, no signature. He'd know. I placed it on his gaming chair, right where he would see it when he leaned back for a drink or a breath or a brag. I imagined the exact moment his eyes would land on it, that one heartbeat of confusion before the comprehension hit like a weight dropped from a great height. It wasn't vengeance, it was justice. The sun was just beginning to rise as I zipped the last suitcase. Pale gold light spilled through the living room windows, soft and full of promise. The air smelled like morning dew and something else. Freedom. I walked through the house one final time. My footsteps were silent. My heart was not. It beat with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt since before Brandon moved back in. In the doorway, I paused. He was still shouting in the other room. I closed the door behind me, slowly. The sound of the latch clicking into place was the last thing I heard. Brandon must have found the note within the hour. Carla told me later the buyer's team arrived to a shattered lamp on the porch and a controller cracked in half in the driveway. Inside, the scene was worse. Drawers flung open, cushions slashed, a gaping hole in the drywall where his gaming chair had collided with it. The house, mine for 2 decades, now bore his rage in every corner I had just emptied. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't want to be. Instead, I sat on the floor of a new apartment with beige carpet and too much echo, surrounded by boxes labeled kitchen, clothes, books, as if giving names to the pieces made them easier to hold. The quiet here wasn't loaded. It wasn't silence as threat. It was just silence, a blankness I was learning to appreciate. That first night, I curled up on a mattress with no frame, under a blanket I'd owned since before Brandon was born. I expected to cry. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, breathing evenly, not once looking over my shoulder. It was strange to not be afraid of someone in the next room. Still, freedom is not a straight line. The guilt hit first, not because I regretted leaving, but because I'd trained myself to feel bad for asserting anything. The voice in my head, my mother's, Brandon's, my own, whispered, "You abandoned him. You gave up. You failed." But then came the relief. A deeper voice. My own, unmuzzled. You survived. You chose peace. You finally remembered who you were before they rewrote you. On the third day, June called. I stared at the name on my phone for a long moment before I answered. "Hey," I said. "Hey." she replied. There was a pause, small, awkward, but not cold. Heard you moved. I did. Good, she said quietly. It was time. Neither of us mentioned the fight at our mother's funeral. We didn't need to. That moment had passed. This was something new. She offered to bring coffee. I said yes. That evening, I hung a picture on the wall. Just one, a photo of a field wide and sun-drenched. No people in it, just space. I bought a plant the next day, a small one, potted ivy, something alive that I could tend without fear of its roots being ripped out. I named it Clara. That night, as I was folding towels, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Hello. A woman's voice answered, warm, deliberate. Is this Leslie Clark? Yes. My name's Dr. Meredith Klein. I'm a therapist. Your son, Brandon, asked me to call you. The words hit differently than I expected. Not anger, not heartbreak, just surprise. Pure, soft-edged surprise. He's seeking help? I asked cautiously. Yes, she replied. He's been coming in twice a week. I think he's starting to understand some things. A silence stretched between us. I'm not asking for anything, she added. He asked me to tell you. I didn't know what to say. I still don't. But I remember standing there, the phone in one hand, my other gently resting on the soil in Clara's pot. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for someone else's healing, only my own. My therapist's office is nothing like I expected. No incense, no dream catchers, no soft couches and weeping. It's clinical but warm. Shelves filled with psychology books and succulents. A simple chair with arms that make you feel held, not trapped. A desk with a tissue box that no one points to. Dr. Maggie Ward, mid-60s, wire-rimmed glasses, a voice like gravel softened with empathy. She listens like it's her only job, and maybe, for once, it is. The first few sessions, I tell her the basics. Brandon, the house, the note. I explain things like a narrator trying to keep the plot coherent. She nods, takes notes, never rushes me. But it's the fourth session that shifts something. You said Brandon's behavior felt familiar, she says. Let's explore why. I don't flinch. I've been expecting this. I guess I always knew, I begin, but never wanted to say it out loud. My mother, she didn't believe in weakness, especially not in women. She used to say, you either control the room or you get controlled. She wasn't warm, not even close. I pause, twisting a tissue in my lap. My father never raised his voice. He didn't need to. He had a presence that erased everyone else's. He'd sigh when she spoke. Just sigh. And she'd stop talking. Dr. Ward leans forward. And what did that teach you? That women should stay small to be safe. The words sit heavy in the room. I feel them settle in my chest, dense and absolute. Later that night, I write it down in my journal. Stay small to be safe. I underline it twice. Then I write, I am tired of being safe. I journal every day after that. Not pretty, curated journaling. Raw, jagged truths scratched into the margins of old notebooks. I write letters I don't send. To my mother, to my husband, to Brandon, to the version of myself who swallowed apologies like vitamins just to make it through the day. I write about how my mother mocked other women for needing too much and how I grew up ashamed of every need I had. I write about my husband, Jonathan, who once told me I was so much more attractive when I was quiet. I write about Brandon, who learned all the wrong lessons because I was too scared to teach the right ones. One night, I taped 3 photographs to the wall above my desk. My mother, my wedding portrait, and a picture of Brandon at 10, all teeth and mischief. I stare at them, one by one, my mother's tight-lipped smile, my husband's hand on my shoulder like possession, Brandon's smirk already forming. Different people, same shadow. I've been haunted for decades by patterns that disguise themselves as love, loyalty, responsibility. Dr. Ward introduces me to the term internalized misogyny. Women conditioned to see their own strength as dangerous, she explains. You didn't just survive, you adapted in a way that erased you. I sit with that for a long time, because it's true. I didn't just endure the abuse, I modeled myself around it. I became pliable, quiet, accommodating. I thought if I was careful enough, passive enough, small enough, I could escape the fallout. But the fallout came anyway. My greatest heartbreak isn't what Brandon did, it's that I made space for it. Dr. Ward doesn't shame me. She reminds me that recognition is not the same as blame, that accountability is not self flagellation. You were surviving, she says. Now you're living. It sounds simple. It feels revolutionary. In session 9, she asks me to say something out loud. Name the anger. I hesitate. She repeats it. You need to hear yourself say it. So I do. I'm angry that I gave up my life to keep a peace that never existed. The sentence vibrates through me like a bell. I say it again, louder. And I don't cry. That night, I dream of my mother's kitchen. The counters are clean. The clock ticks evenly. And in the dream, I speak over my father's sigh. I wake up smiling, because for the first time in my life, I don't feel like a ghost in someone else's story. I feel like the author of my own, and survival is no longer the goal. Peace is. The first letter I write is to Brandon, not to send, just to say everything I never could with him standing in the room. Brandon, you weren't born cruel. You were born scared, just like I was. And I tried to love that fear out of you, but I made myself small instead. I let you believe the world revolved around you because it was easier than asking you to look at me as a person. That was my failure. But yours. Yours was pretending I didn't matter once you no longer needed me. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done pretending love means erasure. I seal it in an envelope with no address. Stack it on my nightstand. The second letter is harder. Mom, I think I finally understand why you were always so sharp, so distant. You were surviving a world that didn't give you space to feel, and instead of teaching me how to feel safely, you taught me how to disappear elegantly. I carried your silence like a family heirloom, but I'm putting it down now. I forgive you, but I'm not following your path. The third is to the girl I used to be. Leslie, I'm sorry no one told you that boundaries were a form of love, that no could be sacred, that safety didn't have to mean silence. I'm here now. I won't abandon you again. These letters sit in a box under my bed. I don't need anyone to read them. I just need to know they exist. June calls a few days later. There's laughter in her voice, unforced this time. Dinner Friday? She asks. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and some god-awful store-bought wine. I accept before I can overthink it. Her home is small, a little chaotic. Books on every surface, one chair always covered in laundry, but it's warm, real. We talk about things we never did as girls. We talk about mom without bitterness. We talk about boundaries, about beginnings. She asks gently if I've spoken to Brandon. I shake my head. Letting go of him, it's the kindest thing I can do for both of us. She nods, doesn't push, just pours another glass of wine. I leave that night without feeling like I've left part of myself behind. The next week, I start my new job. It's a small community library just a few miles from my apartment. My title is library aide, but what I really do is help people find themselves inside stories. Teenagers come in looking for fantasy novels. Mothers chase toddlers through the picture book section. Older men fall asleep in armchairs with newspapers in their laps. It's quiet, safe, full of pages and promise. I shelve biographies and memoirs, noticing how many women don't get happy endings in print. I smile to myself as I slide one thick spine into place. Maybe I don't need one either. Maybe I just need peace. One afternoon, I sit in the back room, flipping through a tattered copy of The Secret Garden. My fingers linger on a page that smells like old ink and dust. My hands are different now. Thinner, lined, more honest. They move slower. They hold with more intention. I trace the words, feel the paper, smile. That night, I come home to a letter in my mailbox. No return address. The handwriting is familiar. Slanted, all caps. I open it cautiously, fingers already trembling before the flap tears away. Mom, I don't know what I thought would happen. I guess I assumed you'd always be there. I didn't mean what I said. Or maybe I did, but I didn't understand what it would cost. I thought you'd come back. Did you mean to abandon me entirely? I'm in therapy now. I'm trying. I don't know what else to say. Brandon. I sit on the edge of my bed, the letter heavy in my lap. The question echoes, did you mean to abandon me entirely? I fold the letter slowly, place it in the box with the others, no answer needed. I read Brandon's letter 3 times, once with trembling hands, once with narrowed eyes, and once in stillness. I folded it carefully, placed it back in its envelope, and returned it to the box under my bed. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't feel compelled to write back. Some wounds don't need confrontation. They need closure. Quiet, personal, irrevocable closure. Instead of responding to him, I wrote something else. Something for me. An essay for a small local women's magazine that circulates through cafes and clinics, dog-eared by hands that often look like mine. I titled it, The Day I Chose Myself. In it, I told the truth, not as a victim, not as a villain, but as a woman reclaiming her narrative after decades of rehearsing everyone else's. I wrote about silence as survival, and how that survival turned into self-erasure, about the inheritance of emotional labor, the cost of politeness, and the shame of saying no when all you've ever been praised for is endurance. I submitted it with no expectation. 2 weeks later, I got the first email, then 10 more, then 20. Women of all ages writing to say, I thought I was the only one. Your story felt like my story. Thank you for giving words to the things I never dared speak. The editor reached out, asking if I'd write again. I said yes before I could think of a reason to say no. I started a workshop at the library, Boundaries and Belonging, Rewriting the Rules After 40. It wasn't huge, just a few folding chairs, a coffee pot, a whiteboard covered in affirmations that didn't feel forced. We talked about shame, about permission, about taking up space, about what it means to grow when you were never given the tools to root. One woman cried during the first session. Another said she'd told her adult son she wouldn't be paying his rent anymore, and for the first time she didn't feel guilty. I didn't teach them strength. They already had it. I just held space until they could see it. After the second session, I stopped at a small plant shop tucked between a pharmacy and a bakery. I wandered past shelves of succulents, palms, and fiddle leaf figs until I saw her, small, sturdy, vibrant, a flowering bromeliad with bright red petals that stood up like a crown. I bought her, named her Leslie. I placed her in the kitchen where the morning sun hit hardest, watered her gently, spoke to her sometimes, not because I believed in magic, but because naming things has power. It was the first time in my life I ever gave something my name because I liked the sound of it. Cooking became ritual again, not rushed, not obligatory, joyful. I learned to bake single-serve quiches to perfect a butternut squash soup that didn't need anyone's approval but my own. I set the table for one, lit a candle, played old records I hadn't heard since before Brandon was born. I made peace with my reflection, lined, grayer, but finally alive. I used to think growth meant becoming someone else. Now I know it means returning to yourself, not as you were, but as you were always meant to be. The farmer's market is alive with color. Peppers in every hue, hand-poured honey, wildflower bouquets wrapped in brown paper. There's music in the air, soft and acoustic, and laughter that doesn't feel like performance. I move through the stalls like a breeze, not invisible, just unobserved. It's a strange kind of freedom to be present without being needed. I hold a basket filled with lemons, fresh basil, a small jar of lavender jam. Nothing heavy, nothing urgent. My body moves with ease. I pause to smell the peaches, to compliment the woman selling heirloom tomatoes, to listen to the child plucking at a ukulele with far more enthusiasm than skill. In another life, I would have hurried, rushed home, checked the time, made sure everything was just so. But this life is slower, quieter. Mine. As I walk, I imagine the voiceover, the kind that plays over the end of a film just before the credits roll. Family isn't who stays, it's who sees you. Sometimes we're born into silence and mistaken it for safety. Sometimes we spend years minimizing ourselves to keep the peace, until we realize peace built on erasure isn't peace at all. I used to think belonging meant being accepted by others. Now I know it's about accepting yourself enough to stop begging for room in places that shrink you. I pass a mother wrangling 3 kids and smile at the chaos. She doesn't notice me. That's okay. I'm not here to be noticed. I turned down a quiet gravel path that leads to the community garden I helped plant last spring. It used to be an empty lot filled with broken glass and overgrown weeds. Now it's rows of kale, carrots, sunflowers reaching high toward the sky. I kneel by the planter I've been tending basil, rosemary, marigolds. I water them, pinch a few dead leaves. My hands are steady, earthy. A child runs past me, barefoot, laughing, chasing a butterfly. I look up and smile, not because I know her, but because joy like that asks nothing from you. It just reminds you you're still part of the world. There's no dramatic ending, no phone call from Brandon, no apology that ties it all up neatly. Just space, stillness, breath. I sit on the edge of the planter, sun warming my back. I think of the house, the one that used to hold my pain like wallpaper. I think of the silence I inherited, the voices I drowned, the voice I reclaimed. I think of the girl I used to be, afraid to speak, afraid to leave, afraid to want more. And then I think of now, of this dirt under my nails, this air in my lungs, this soft sense of enough. This is not the end of the story, but it is the beginning of something I never thought I'd have. Belonging by choice. If this story echoed something unspoken in you, pause, breathe. You're not alone, and you're not imagining it. We write to remember who we were before we forgot ourselves. Stay, reflect, read on. There's more where that voice came from. And maybe, just maybe, it's time you wrote your own note, too.